will please have your pencil and this sheet called Translating Words to Math reference sheet ready to go. In math, we need to be able to translate a phrase or statement that's written in words into a mathematical expressions, equations, or inequalities. Here's a list of frequently used words or phrases, and this is not all-inclusive. There's many more phrases and words we could use. So let's focus our attention on the words and phrases that refer to addition. We have add, plus, sum, increase by, gain, total, more than, greater than, and added to. Again, there's many other words and phrases we could come up with. That said, these words are used frequently. And generally speaking, we use the phrase, or we write the phrase in the order that it's given. For instance, if they said 6 plus 7, we would write 6 plus 7. But there are some words and phrases that don't follow that rule. And one of the words we're going to work with is sum. That refers to addition, but they might say the sum of this number and that number. And so what would happen is if they gave me this number, which I'm just going to use a little box for, and that number, well, the phrase says the sum of, and the word sum comes first, which tells us we have to put the plus sign where the word and is. We'd still keep the order of the numbers given, but the word sum, referring to addition, would come first. So we'll practice that as we move on with this. There's a couple other phrases that are highlighted or starred, and that's more than, greater than, added to. All of these words also switch the order. So they change the order that we write the phrase in. So, for instance, would be added to. 5 added to 10. So I said the word 5, or the number 5 first. 5 added to 10, but we're adding it to 10. So we would actually write that as 10 plus 5, even though we mentioned the 5 first. They're saying we're adding the 5 to the 10 that should already be there. So now let's move on to subtraction. Our list of words and phrases are subtract, minus, difference, decreased by, loss, less than, fewer than, and subtracted from. So once again, if they said 5 minus 2, I would write that in the order that they gave it to me. However, if they said the word difference, they would say the difference of this number and that number. And I would be, once again, where I'm given a number, the word and that number. And when they say difference, it means I'm supposed to put the subtraction sign where the word and is. The numbers will stay in the same order they mentioned them. However, the minus sign, which is what difference refers to, replaces the word and. And just like addition, when we say less than, fewer than, are subtracted from, these words change the order. So they change order that the phrase is given. So if we're given the phrase 2 fewer than 8, even though I said 2 first, I would write 8 and subtract 2. So 2 fewer than 8 means I'm taking 8 minus 2. So let's move on to words for multiplication. We see the word multiply, times, and product. Again, there are more words that may imply or mean multiplication. So we can always add to our list. So you're going to notice that product is bolded, and what's going to happen is order is not going to be necessarily how we initially are given something. So if it said the product of 3 and a number, well, I would write 3 And if I don't know the number, I'm going to write a variable. So we'll call n the unknown number. But product, my times sign, would go here. So I would have 3 times n. And if you recall, when we're writing multiplication, we often put things side by side and don't show that multiplication sign. But the actual multiplication would happen in between those. So our final list of words for operations is division. Let's move to that. So we see divide, per. Sometimes per can imply multiplication as well. And then quotient. Once again, you might have guessed that they're going to say the quotient of this number and that number. So they might say the quotient of a number and 2. So we would take quotient, which means division, and we would put the division sign where the word and is. So we could write it a number, and let's call that n again, divided by 2. But if you recall, we often like to write division the high school way with our fraction bar used as a division bar. So this would again insert the division sign in between the two numbers. So let's look at the very bottom part of the sheet. So you notice that this says relationships. Up above were operations, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. And it's what we do to numbers. For instance, we gather them up and put them together, or we break them apart, or we divide them into pieces, group them into pieces. But when we're talking about relationships, we're saying that one side, a group on one side, has a relationship with a group on the other side. For instance, if we use an equal sign, then if I have this, for instance, if I write just an example to show the relationship, if I have 3 plus 1, that would equal 2 plus 2. They might look different, but the relationship of equals means that their value is the same. They equal one another. So we're not doing anything to the numbers. We're just establishing that both sides are indeed equal. So the words that we use are just the word is. Sometimes that's easy to lose that tiny little word. They might say 3 plus 1 is 4. They might say 3 plus 1 equals 4, or they could say 3 plus 1 is equal to. So these are the phrases that we use to imply that we need an equal sign. When you hear those words, we need to see the equal sign. The next set we haven't worked with very frequently so far, and these are inequalities. So if it says is less than, you're going to notice up above, if it's just less than, that's talking about subtraction. But if you say is less than, it's referring to this relationship symbol. And that means that I would write the relationship 2 is less than 3. There's a relationship, this number is smaller, but it's also saying that they're not the same. The word is more than, the word magic little tiny word is more than. If it's just more than, it means that we're adding. But if it is more than, it's now talking about this relationship symbol, saying that whatever is on the left is bigger than, so whatever's on the left is bigger than whatever's on the right-hand side. Our next phrase is less than or equal to. So what that symbol looks like is the less than symbol with part of the equal sign. And this relationship is saying that whatever is on the left is smaller than or possibly the same as whatever's on the right. Equal in value or smaller than in value. So is more than or equal to would look like this. And then finally the two phrases at most. So if I read this from left to right, whatever is given on the left is at most means that it cannot be larger than. So whatever I have here, if it is at most, then it has to be less than, or possibly it could be equal to. At most mean it could be exactly the same, but it is less than or equal to. And then finally, another way to say is more than or equal to is at least. So if I thought about this, if I had a number on this side, it could be greater than, but also equal to whatever on the right-hand side. And we'll spend more time on this later. So thanks for taking notes, and let's go on and put these words into play.